Hello and welcome to Films and That. My name's Rob Turnbull.
And my name's Sam Hall.
And today we are looking at Lake Mungo. And Sam, this was your pick, so why did you pick this film?
Me and my girlfriend have been playing a lot of Phasmophobia lately, the ghost hunting game, and I went on a big exploration of ghost films after that, became obsessed with ghost films. This is just one that ended up really sticking out for me as being a bit more impressive than a lot of the others, because there's a lot of bad ghost films out there.
Awesome. Okay, let's get to it.
Okay. A family tragedy leads to media interest as photographs and camera footage reveal that there might be more to life after death.
This review contains spoilers. We could give a spoiler warning for every film we do, but I think with this one in particular, what really drew me into it was wanting to find out what was going to happen next. So I think if you watch this video and you haven't seen the film, it's going to be ruined for you. So have you seen it multiple times? Because I haven't.
Yeah, I watched it about 3 times. It was most effective the first time because of the kind of the reveals that come out. The joy is to try and surprise you.
We received a call around 6 p.m. tonight of a missing girl, and on discovering the nature of the situation, we called in the search and rescue divers from Melbourne.
So this film is shot in a kind of mockumentary, documentary style.
I think it was just about starting to pick up on the found footage craze, but obviously everybody wanted to do it from a different angle, and this one wanted to do it from the mockumentary style angle, really trying to give across as much realism as possible. You know, how much can you believe that there might be life after death and that there might actually be ghosts? Even when it's done well, it's still just really, really obvious that it's fake, usually.
Yeah.
And in this one, I think that they put a lot of effort into making everybody seem like they might be genuine members of the public.
If we didn't tell June, then it would be like we were hiding something. So I don't know why. But why not?
There was no real script for this. There was like areas that the director wanted people to cover, but most of it was fairly improvised by the actors. They do feel like real people. It does feel like you're interviewing actual members of the public, and that just leads a lot of credence to what they're saying, and it makes it feel more real and therefore more scary. I really like the mix of formats that they use. So they use film, video, there's like mobile phone footage at one point. There's a real mix of formats, which does make it feel like you're watching something that's been created after the fact.
It's really of its time as well. And that usually is the case with a lot of found footage stuff as well, or stuff that deals with technology, like The Ring, you know, having video cassettes and stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that just wouldn't work that well now, basically just because the technology's improved so much.
I was thinking that when you see like the mobile phone footage, and it's like 2001 mobile phone footage, it's really low bitrate quality, and that's what makes it scary. And I was just thinking, like, kids filming stuff now, you just see that it was like a bagool or something. Oh, there's a bagool over there.
It wouldn't work, would it? Yeah, if this was all in 4K or whatever, it would ruin the film.
It's like when you're peering towards just like a random mess, and you're kind of trying to figure out what it is, and then you realise what it is. That's when it's scary.
Yeah.
There was an image of Alice, very hard to decipher, in the bottom of the frame, kneeling under a tree. It was only after viewing the clip several times that we realised what she was doing.
Right at the beginning, they're talking about a family tragedy. 2 kids went swimming. They're both kind of like older, slightly older teenagers. One of them comes out the water, the other doesn't. There's a search party. For a bit, they don't find anything. And then eventually they find a body, and they discover that the youngest daughter of this 4-piece family has sadly drowned and died. This is sort of where the horror starts, because you see photos of the corpse, of the cadaver, looking quite repulsive, really. This is obviously juxtaposed with these family photos. But there's certain lines in it, though, actually, that take me out of it a little bit. One moment, the family is saying, oh, we saw a figure in the corner, and we looked at it for a while, and then we realised that 100% it was unmistakably our daughter. About 10 minutes later, they say, we realised actually it was a bloke.
And I became convinced sense that Alice was still alive.
And then we looked more closely and, Doug zoomed in on it.
Yeah, well, I got right in on the computer and from what, could have looked like a female figure from a long way away, up close and tight, you could see that it definitely was neither female nor Alice.
And they keep on saying that, this is 100% proof of something. This is unmistakably. And you see like a little blob, unmistakably somebody or whatever.
Yeah.
And they say that a lot. And I just think, you can't quite make out, to be honest, what it is.
It is a bit mixed up. So what happens is they start to see their dead daughter appearing in these photographs. And there's a really nice build-up of tension as things get weirder and weirder. For some reason, in the middle of the film, they decide that, oh no, it was the brother faking these things the whole time.
That's just to sort of string you along and put a bit of doubt into you. I know that you're probably thinking at the back of your mind, well, we know it's going to turn out that it was a ghost all along. It's a twist, basically. They wanted to make it a bit more interesting and not just have it about... Because otherwise, you're just going from A to B, you're just revealing more and more about ghosts until you're like, yeah, okay, we get it now. Ghosts are real or whatever. So they have to insert that doubt in to make it interesting again.
I felt at some points it was trying to put too much in, and I think it might have benefited from stripping it back a bit. But it was still quite effective in creating a really tense, scary atmosphere.
There was a second figure, not Matthew in the hallway, but someone else squatting in the dark in Alice's room.
On this CCTV footage they've got in their house, there was a guy in their house and they realised it was their neighbour. And then this leads on to a whole thing about how they discover a kind of dark past about their daughter that they didn't know, which is another theme of the film, I guess, is that she was being sexually exploited by their neighbour, basically, who they say she used to babysit for them. And this is to sort of add another kind of angle of tragedy to the whole thing, I think. There's a lot of emphasis on this idea that she led a secret life. I think this is heavily referencing Twin Peaks.
Right.
The family is called Palmer. She was fished out of a lake, like Laura Palmer. I'm just speculating, but I assume that the filmmaker was a fan of David Lynch and Twin Peaks. It's that theme of like a dark kind of underbelly, dark secrets hidden away that you didn't realise were there before.
Yeah, she told lies and no one knew the real her, and it's all come out after her death.
There's another character introduced later on called Ray the Psychic.
Where I come from, when someone dies, they block out all the mirrors in the house to stop the dead from finding their way back. There's things like that that make a difference.
They don't end up revealing, he was a con man all along. But they insert little doubts here and there about his intentions. Because it's a mockumentary format, there's that element of the unreliable narrator. Everybody's just saying their side of the story. You have to just try and work out yourself whether or not they're telling the truth. And especially for this guy, Ray the Psychic, who is doing seances with the family to try and communicate with their daughter and stroke sister.
Tell me what you see.
My house.
That's when it's kind of revealed that Alice was doing these seances, or in contact with him anyway.
Yeah, she was talking to him and he was putting her into trances. She has this, like you said, this fear of death and this worry and malaise that she's not really able to explain. She's convinced that it's not like depression or whatever. Yeah. She's convinced that it's because she has this sense of dread that something terrible is going to happen. That's why she goes to a psychic instead of a psychologist like the rest of us would.
How do you feel when you wake up from these dreams?
They scare me a bit.
That's when it started to get really interesting for me, is when they started to show you footage of Alice going into these trances. She started to sort of like predict things that were actually happening later on after she died. And that's when it started to get really spooky for me.
Especially there's a moment when to make that really interesting, they're juxtaposing two psychic sessions where the two characters are going into a trance. Alice, and she's talking about her experiences, and June, the mother, talking about her psychic experience. And the reason why they juxtapose it is because it's clear that they're basically like meeting each other in this kind of moment, even though one is in the past and one is in the future.
Someone's there. I think someone's coming down the hall.
Door's open.
Do you know who it is?
It was good because they did that right at the end of the film as well. If they'd have done that earlier on, I think it would have spoilt it a bit. But it's all about that build up, I think, to stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's a really tragic one at the end when the family have decided to pack up and leave the house because they want to move on with their lives. And then it cuts between that and Alice talking about how her family are leaving her. You know, she's stuck in this house still and they're moving away.
I don't think she knows I'm there.
Alice isn't here.
There's that image of the photo as they're about to leave the house. They're all standing out in front of the house to say goodbye to it, basically. And in the background of the window, there's a figure, which is obviously, you know, indicated to be Alice being left behind.
She seems to have a lot of like premonitions about what's going to happen. This sort of culminates in Lake Mungo, which was like a school trip, essentially, like a summer camp.
They talk about how, I remember this trip because she came back and she'd lost a phone that we had only given her a month before, and some of her other stuff. There was something about her that she looked kind of disturbed at this, what was meant to be a happy getaway. She appears to be burying something. They've realised now that they want to find out exactly what it was that she was burying in Lake Mungo. So they work out from the footage exactly where the spot was. And to make it even creepier, they say, we went at night because we didn't want to be there with all the crowds and all the tourists and stuff.
Doesn't look like a very nice spot though, really, does it? It looked like a big bog.
Yeah.
I don't know why you'd go there. Why would tourists go there? Maybe that's what they do in Australia. Maybe being really...
Get away from the beaches.
Yeah.
We're so sick of beaches. We want a bog. The trouble is we mainly only see it through this crappy, like old school phone footage. So we don't really see much of it.
That did make me quite nostalgic, actually, because that's the sort of thing, you know, when they're just like all the girls just like screaming, you can't really hear anything because it's just really bad audio and it's just crappy quality footage. That's what my school days were like. So it made me nostalgic for that.
Will they buy a lake?
Well, no, just like you'd film stuff on your phone and you watch it back and it's like completely incomprehensible rubbish.
That's what you're saying. They uncover what she was burying and they find that it was her phone, and they look back on the videos that she took. And one video in particular, that is the denouement of the whole film, really. It's the big twist that kind of ties it all together. And it's done in a really kind of spooky way. There's a figure kind of approaching Alice as she's holding her phone, and it gets closer and closer and closer. Then the father interjects, Russell, and he says he realised at that moment that figure was the face that he saw when he was made to identify the body of Alice. This is why Alice was feeling so down and unhappy shortly before her death. It's not because she wanted to commit suicide, which was kind of, being implied throughout the film, that she possibly drowned herself. She was terrified because she received the premonition of her death. So I suppose in that sense, it's... I'm going to spoil another film now. Don't look now, right?
I've not seen that.
Oh, okay. Well, I think let's just spot that for you now.
It's sort of like Hodor.
Hodor. Oh yes, Hodor. That's it. Yeah.
Hold the door! Hold the door!
Hodor. I don't know whether to laugh or take it seriously. Hodor.
It's the stupidest twist I've ever seen in anything. But there we go. I do like the idea of seeing your demise and then being traumatized by it. You wouldn't be able to explain it. You'd recognize it was you and you saw your own death, and presumably you'd know that it wasn't that far away. So what do you do in that instance?
It's just a matter of waiting for it to happen. And that's where the horror of the film is derived from, really, because up until that point, the only horror we've had is derived from just blurry images in photos, basically.
Well, that sequence in particular is quite chilling because It's built up that there was something important in this footage, so you sat there staring at it, like, what's that? And it's like this triangle of light, and you can't really make it out. And as it gets closer, you suddenly realise it's a figure, and that did send a chill up the back of my neck.
Yeah.
It's really effective.
I feel like it's what the film was kind of made for, if you know what I mean. That was, I feel like they were working backwards from that moment.
I'm convinced that Alice knew she was going to die. I'm convinced of that.
So Sam, what are your final thoughts on Lake Mungo?
So I did really like it. Quite often with me, horror is more interesting when there's an element of tragedy attached to it. That's the big theme of it, is she has a complete lack of control over her future. And we all do. There's, it's also that inevitable, like, we're all going to die thing, sorry to bring it on a downer, but I find that really interesting and fascinating. I don't know where that morbid fascination comes from about that inevitability of death, but I similarly, have a bit of a fear of death.
Well,
and
I think
maybe I could relate to it in that way, in somehow as well.
The more you learn about Alice, the more you realise how troubled she was, which just gives everything so much more weight. It's not just a nameless demon that's come back. It's a person that means something to these people. It's an actual normal human being, and no one can explain away these weird occurrences. And ultimately, it's a film about loss, isn't it? And about moving on. It's not really about ghosts. It's about coming to terms with loss, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for this time on Films and That. If you like this episode, please consider supporting Films and That on Patreon, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.